Hey y'all, who dat? What is up? And happy Thanksgiving. I am Jeff Nowak, and this is another preview edition of Inside Black and Gold, getting you ready for week, 13. Saints 2-9, hitting the road to face the Dolphins 4-7, but winners of 3 of their last 4 games. Possibly the most enigmatic team in the 2025 NFL season. I genuinely went into this week thinking, hey, maybe we skip the preview episode. It's Thanksgiving. Maybe we change course. And then I was like, I need to learn more about the Dolphins to go into this matchup. So we did set up an interview, and we will bring it to you with Alain Poupart. He covers the Dolphins for Sports Illustrated, also hosts the All Dolphins podcast. So we're going to be getting the lowdown from him. This is going to be a somewhat abbreviated episode, not going to be your traditional long form preview. And I think because of all the division games coming up, we will kind of change formats going forward for the final 5 games, because we've already heard about the Falcons, the Bucs, the Panthers. We don't need to talk about them again. So we're going to kind of dive more into look ahead content. But for this week, going to get into the preview. First segment's going to be injuries. Also want to dive in deep on the kickers. Not going to do a traditional breeze and stuff segment. And then we'll close out in the final segment with myself and Steve Geller kind of breaking down, okay, what are the keys to the matchup? How do the Saints go about winning this game if they can? Some pretty significant injuries, some kicker questions to answer, and we'll get into that. First time heading to Miami to play a football game since the Super Bowl. The Saints have played a road game against the Dolphins, but it was in London. So keep that in mind. Saints have not gone to Miami in the recent past, but they have had a lot of success going to Florida in general. Obviously, a big win over the Packers in Jacksonville. They have always owned Tampa Bay. They've always owned the Bucs in Tampa Bay. Even last year when they lost that game, they were up 10 at halftime. The year before that, the Bucs had a chance to win the division in Week 17. The Saints went in there and kind of embarrassed them in front of their home fans. The Bucs still did win the division, but they didn't do it on their terms. A 38-3 win in Tampa against the Tom Brady Bucs. So the state of Florida just seems to do the Saints good things. So we'll see how that goes. Either way, let's hit a quick break, come back, break down the injuries and the kickers before getting into that interview with Alain Poupart. Again, if you haven't subscribed yet, please do that. I'm Jeff Nowak. This is Inside Black and Gold. My co-host Steve Geller, you can follow him. My co-host Steve Geller, you can follow him at Steve Geller WWL. You can follow myself at Jeff_Nowak. You can follow the show at Saints_pod. I'd like to thank one of our editors, Knox Bardine. He's been doing a great job cutting more clips. We're going to be trying to get more short form clips out to you on the Twitter account and shorts on YouTube, all that good stuff. So we're working on it. We're getting there. We are almost a functioning organization as a podcast all by itself, which is exciting. Hopefully we can say that about the Saints one of these days. And if they win a few games, maybe we will. Either way, who dat, go Saints. We'll be right back. And we are back on Inside Black and Gold. Jeff Nowak here, getting you ready for Saints 2-9 at Dolphins 4-7. This is a very, very confusing Dolphins team. This is a Dolphins team that has beaten the Bills. This is a Dolphins team that has lost by 25 points to the Browns. Figure that out. I certainly can't. But you're going to have Tua Tagovailoa. You're going to have Jalen Waddle. You're going to have Devon Achane, who I think I'm saying his name correctly. Those are the big names for them, and the Saints, we'll see what they have, right? And this is the first injury report for the Saints in quite some time where I'm looking at it saying I genuinely don't know if several star players are going to be on the field. So let's just dive right into it, while also noting we are recording this podcast on Friday morning ahead of the final injury report, ahead of Kellen Moore possibly declaring a kicker. So keep that in mind. I'm going to tell you a bunch of stuff, and that may change as of this afternoon. But Thanksgiving week has kind of thrown us into alert, so we're doing what we can. There's going to be some time traveling in this episode. Don't worry about it. Either way, let's flash up the Saints half of the injury report, and it is short, but it is also significant. The biggest name who I do not expect to be on the field, running back Alvin Kamara. He sprained his knee on what was objectively a hip drop tackle by Cade Ellis. We'll see if he gets fined. Those will come out on Saturday. It doesn't really matter for the Saints. dealing with a sprained knee, did not practice each of the first 2 days. Do not expect him to be out there. Devin Neal, the rookie who is likely to step into the lion's share of the role going forward in week 13, however long Alvin Kamara is out, dealing with an ankle injury. He was limited each of the first 2 days, but I fully expect him to be out there and be a full participant. Does not sound like anything significant. Offensive tackle Taliese Fuaga, limited on Wednesday, full participant on Thursday. So it does look like you're going to be getting your starting right tackle into the game for the first time in 3 weeks, coming back from that high ankle sprain. The last 2 weeks, we've seen Austin Richards step into that role, who has performed admirably, but it's a very big step down, and I do think that really affected you last week in negative ways. It would mean you effectively have your starting five out there, at least as it exists now, with Kelvin Banks at left tackle, Dylan Radins at left guard, Luke Fortner at center, Cesar Ruiz at right guard, Taliese Fuaga at right tackle. So you at least have continuity within that group. That is now your starting five for the rest of the year, considering Eric McCoy has been out and will be out the rest of the year. The final injury here to watch, Chris Olave. Sounds like he's dealing with back spasms. We watched him actually leave practice. We're only out there for about 20, 25 minutes during these practice sessions, but during that window, which is a lot of times the individual work, we watched him walk off the field with a trainer, was very stiff in how he was moving, which makes sense if his back was acting up. He was a DMP on Thursday. Granted, these are not really significant practices. Wednesday was basically a walkthrough. Thursday was a very short session before the holiday. So Friday is going to be the big practice for him. To me, it's like, okay, if this is something that you're really going to battle through, are you going to battle through it for a 2-9 team? But here's the thing. You need him out there. I mean, if you already traded away Rashid Shaheed, you moved on from Brandon Cooks, it's the Chris Olave show, and suddenly you don't have Chris Olave, and man, what are you looking at in the wide receiver room? It's bleak. And yeah, you have Devon Vele, who, yeah, great. It would be nice to see him featured more. That's not what you intended when you brought him in, for him to be the featured player in your offense. And then obviously Mason Tipton, Kevin Austin, Dante Pettis is on the practice squad. He'll probably be elevated, but he's also been dealing with an injury. We don't exactly know what it is because practice squad players don't get listed on the injury report. But if he can't go, then you're looking at another punt returner, maybe Ugo Amadi. I don't know. Mason Tipton obviously could be in that role. But some serious injuries, not a ton of injuries to monitor. All four of these players are either starters or the guys you would have fill in for the starters who aren't expected to be there. So just something to watch. I mean, if you don't have Chris Olave out there, this offense has already struggled to move the ball. It'll be a lot of Jawan Johnson. I imagine you'll run a lot of 12 and 13 personnel and really try to run the ball, lean on him, kind of like you did in that third quarter against the Falcons last week. A lot of long clock-churning drives that, hey, if you finish him off, great. If you don't finish him off, then suddenly it's like, wow, this feels hopeless. See how that goes. But I do think that's going to be the identity. That's the ideal identity of this team moving forward with Tyler Shuck, is moving forward with a rookie quarterback who you're trying to protect to some extent. Is, can we extend drives? Can we run the ball? Can we set up third and short, fourth and short, keep the defense off the field? And then it just comes down to, okay, when you get into that red area, when you get inside the 30, attack, can you score touchdowns? And that'll determine whether you have success or not. But that's going to be something to watch this week. Flipping it over, the Dolphins, not a ton of injuries to monitor either. They have 10 players listed on the injury report, but 5 of them were full participants as of Thursday. All the others were limited, so they did not have a single DNP on Wednesday or Thursday. So, I don't anticipate injuries to really be impacting them all that much. Let's just talk about the limited guys, because if you're a full participant on Thursday, you're probably going to play. So we're talking about limited offensive lineman Aaron Brewer, foot/ankle injuries. You have cornerback Roswell Douglas also dealing with foot and ankle injuries. You have offensive lineman Austin Jackson with a toe injury. You have defensive tackle Benito Jones with an ankle injury. And then you have tight end Darren Waller with a pectoral injury. Now, Darren Waller is a guy to monitor because he's coming off of injured reserve. This is his return to practice week. So a lot of times with guys coming back from injured reserve, you'll see them practice for a week before coming back. That's not always the case. Last week, Divine Diablo got back from injured reserve and played immediately. So that'll be something to watch. And Darren Waller's a matchup issue. It's just funny. He retired, but he came back and he's there. So it's just, sometimes guys retire for reasons that are not relative to not being able to play football anymore. But Darren Waller will be a weapon for them if he's able to play. They also have Greg Dulcich, who they signed after he was waived by a couple teams. He's more of a receiving threat than a blocking threat. I just think, hey, if you can stop the run against this team, if you can keep them bottled up and stop them from being explosive and force them to get the ball out quickly behind the line of scrimmage, get up, rally to the ball, tackle, you can beat this team. But I just don't know if the Saints are going to be able to score points. And that's been an issue for them basically all season long. So I'm not breaking new ground here. One of the reasons they haven't been able to score a ton of points is that even on the drives that you were in scoring range and didn't score a touchdown, it seemed like a lot of the time the kick wasn't going through the uprights for the 3 points that it seemed like you earned. That happened twice in the first half against the Falcons in situations where you're just trying to keep pace, and instead you're just zeros on the scoreboard when there shouldn't be zeros on the scoreboard. And that's because Blake Grupe, he biffed a 38-yarder after a 75-yard kickoff return that should have guaranteed you some points. He missed a 47-yarder later in the half that would have tied the game, or that would have brought the Saints within 3. If you had made both those kicks, you would have been tied at 13 late in the first half, and that would have felt like a very different game. Just continued a trend of misses. I mean, he had 8 through the first 11 games of the season. And keep in mind, like we hear all the time, like, oh, he wasn't missing in practices. According to Charlie Smyth, Blake Grupe has only missed 3 practices in the Saints practice facility since the start of the year. Right? So when they say, like, he kicked well in practice, like, yeah, he's kicking 100% in practice. So it becomes difficult to say, like, oh, let's get rid of the guy when he's making all his kicks in practice. But over time, it just became a thing. I was able to chat with Blake briefly over this week, and he basically said, like, he's not even sure how this season spiraled in the way that it did, but he's aware that it did spiral. I mean, you can't be missing those kicks. He understands that. The team understands that. And, it's a difficult decision for them to move on, right? He was a popular guy in the locker room. That he was voted team captain for a reason. Like, you don't see a lot of young kickers voted team captain. I think that just tells you the level of respect he had in that room, which was why it became a difficult conversation to move on from him. They ultimately did. We haven't recorded a podcast since Monday, but the Saints did have Justin Tucker and Cade York, former LSU standout, in for a workout. I was told Cade York made 11 of 12 kicks in his workout. Now, these aren't full snap hold kicks. These are kicks off like the sticks, the tee. If you go out there and you just put it on a tee and you kick it, that's what the workouts were happening with. So he won that competition. I don't know what Justin Tucker made. I don't know if Justin Tucker had won it, if they would have signed him. That's a whole other question. It's something to be dug into down the line. But thankfully, we do not have to grapple with the ramifications of potentially signing Justin Tucker and the noise that would come with that. He's not here. Cade York was signed to the practice squad, not the active roster. And the Saints did have an open roster spot when that occurred. So, if they were intending to just sign him and make him the starting kicker, they could have made that clear. Instead, they signed him to the practice squad, which indicated at the time immediately, hey, it's going to be a competition throughout the week with Charlie Smyth, the international pathway player, the guy who's been here since last training camp, has been developing, and Cade York, a guy who was a 4th-round pick of the Browns, really kind of flamed out with with Cleveland, ending up spending a year out of the NFL. Came back last year, landed with Washington, missed both of his kicks, got cut, ended up with Cincinnati to close out the year, made 9 of 11 kicks, really kind of straightened things out, had to make from 59 yards, so the distance is still very much there. And so, yeah, that competition happened on Thursday. Sounded like it would be 12 kicks, all different ranges. Kickoffs were also a part of it. Now, when you're picking a kicker, you have to consider, hey, can he handle the kickoff? Does he have like the juice to make all these different types of kicks you want to make? Can you trust him to kick it short of the goal line? Is he going to be constantly kicking it into the end zone? Like, where do you kind of value that? We did get a chance to talk to Phil Galliano after that competition, but before any decision was made, he spoke extensively about both kickers, the situation, why they cut Blake. So let's hear part of that conversation.
I could share the results that they both kicked the ball really well, and it's making the decision very difficult. So we haven't made a final decision yet, but both guys did a really good job today kicking.
What goes into it beyond just making the kicks? Like, is there an element of like how the kicks were made?
There is, yes. So obviously make or miss, right? That's right. What you're judging on. But then there's some other things that go into as far as, you know, like how the ball come off his foot, how high was it a line drive, what are the operation times, that sort of deal. And then, you know, both of those guys kicked off today as well, which, as you know, is a big component, especially, you know, against Miami. They have two really good kick returners, so being able to kind of execute some different kicks and ball location and stuff like that goes into it as well as the field goal part.
How far have you seen, like, from the day he came in last year to now, like, have you seen kind of marked change or growth from him?
We have, like, the difference now to then is like the difference between red and blue, to be honest with you. Like, that's how much. You got to remember now, like, when Charlie came, he had whatever that was, a couple months of training and learning how to do it at, you know, at the IMG Academy where he started. And then, but those cumulative reps of never doing it in high school and never doing it in college, it's really a big deal, you know. And there's so many technical things that go into it that, you know, would be boring and most people don't understand. But him just having to figure out how to walk the ball off the right way and his steps to his approach was a really big deal. It's something that, you know, he's got down where we want it now, but like when he first got here, it was never the same. He was stepping under himself. It was kind of rounded. It was just, but he just didn't have any cumulative reps and didn't know any better.
Can you walk him through like what you want that to look like, or do you kind of let him figure that out for himself?
So Charlie was a little different because he really didn't know. So it was a combination of, here's what I think, here's what you do well, let's mix these together. And that, I mean, that took a lot of work when he first got here. I mean, you know, days he wasn't kicking, we were using lines and tape and just getting them aligned the right way and taking the proper footwork and filming his steps towards the ball and that sort of thing. And, you know, where your plant foot goes, because if it's too close or too far, you may close your hips off. And that's why, like, when you see misses go one way or the other drastically, like, there's a reason behind that. And so we've kind of come up with a combination of him and me. And, you know, I think we're in a good place.
Yeah, so we'll see how it goes. I would expect, you know, obviously recording this Friday morning. I would be surprised if the head coach doesn't just come out and announce the kicker on Friday, because what is the benefit of keeping your kicker secret? Like, it's not like anyone's game planning for the kicker. But worst case scenario, we will know as of Saturday, because with neither of these kickers on the active roster, one of them will have to be elevated for the game, and those elevations occur on Saturday. They are announced on Saturday. I do think that having both guys on the practice squad does tend to lean Charlie Smyth's way, because you wouldn't sign Cade York to the active roster and then go with Charlie Smyth, but sticking with Charlie Smyth on the practice squad means you maintain that extra practice squad spot and you don't have to cut anyone on the active roster. You can elevate each guy up to 3 times. There are 6 games left on the season. So theoretically, you could see both kickers, right? You could see one elevated 3 times, the other one elevated 3 times if the first guy isn't getting it done, and go from there. I think the alternative is whoever you send out there first in these first 3 games, he kicks well enough that you want to keep going for the final 3 games, and then you would see them signed. And once a guy like Charlie Smyth is signed to the active roster, he would then vacate that roster exemption that the Saints have been enjoying over the last 2 years. But either way, I talked to both guys. You know, they're both really excited for any potential opportunity. Cade York, you know, he's been kind of twiddling his thumbs. It's a difficult situation to be an NFL kicker and not be kicking. You know, like he said there were situations where he thought he was going to get called in for a job and then didn't, you know, and that has been going on for a while. You know, you sit around for 11 weeks, 12 weeks waiting for a job that doesn't come, finally get an opportunity. And the good news for him is I fully expect the Saints to hold 2 kickers, because Charlie Smyth is a guy that you just don't know what you're going to get from him, right? So even if they go with Charlie, Cade's going to stick around, I would guess. And, you know, you heard from Phil, it's a situation that, you know, they had to basically build him from the ground up as a kicker. You know, this isn't a guy who went through high school, went through college, learned how to kick that way. It's a guy who kicked professionally for the first time like 8 months before he arrived with the Saints. So even stuff like the walk up to the ball, what your routine is, like Phil basically said, like every time he went out there, it looked different. Like it was different every time. And that's the opposite of what you want. Like think of it as like a free throw shooter. Like you go watch guys shooting free throws. There's a billion different ways guys potentially set up to shoot a free throw. But at the end of the day, the important thing is you do the same thing every time. And that was just kind of one of those things that as a new kicker in the NFL, it was like, oh yeah, okay, this. Where's your plant foot? Like where are you contacting the ball? Exactly how far are you lining up? There's a lot There's a lot. But I'm excited. I think it's going to be Charlie Smyth personally. I could be wrong. I might regret saying that in a few hours when if they announce Cade York as the starting kicker. But I'm rooting for Charlie. He's an exciting guy. I have an interview with him that we'll play on the pregame show on WWL. I think as I've talked to him over the last 2 years, maybe I've gotten better at kind of hearing the Irish accent. I think the Irish accent has also faded a little bit because I used to have a lot of trouble understanding him when he was talking, and now I can, maybe my ear has just picked it up. But no, he understands like this is an opportunity for him, and Cade understands it's an opportunity for him, and we'll see how it goes. Right? I don't expect them to be going out there and trying 65-yard kicks, and I think the thing for Charlie is we know the 65-yard kick is in there, and if they ever get into a situation where the 65-yard kick is the option at the end of the first half, at the end of the game, I'm thrilled at the potential opportunity to see him kick that. The thing is, for Charlie, the biggest thing is not the ability to kick those. The biggest thing is going to be being consistent from 40 yards and in, right? Like extra points. That's the thing with Blake Grupe that we never had to wonder about. We knew he was going to go out there and make his extra points, right? And that's not a given. I remember Cody Parkey coming in here, and it was like, oh, he missed 2 extra points. Get him out of here. But Brett Maher, he was actually decent with the Saints. I remember him going to the Cowboys, and he had a great season, except there was one game where I watched him miss 3 extra points. And, like, those have to be guaranteed points. And so, like, he cannot be inconsistent in that part of the game. He's got to be able to knock that through. And I think if you don't go with him, it's going to be because you don't trust him there. Phil said both guys kicked well, making it a difficult decision. And I think if it's a difficult decision, the tie would go to Charlie, would be my guess. Just because he's been here, just because what do you have to lose? But we'll have to wait and see. Either way, that's going to be the end of this segment for now. That's really the only news to talk about. There'll be a lot more coming out of the game, but just don't have a ton set up for you right now. I enjoyed my Thanksgiving. I hope you did as well. Didn't spend a whole lot of time working. But again, we're going to come back with an interview with Alain Poupart, publisher of Miami Dolphins on SI, also hosts the All Dolphins podcast. Give us the lowdown on what's going on in Miami land, then come back and close out with some X factors, keys to the game, whatever you want to call it. We haven't come up with a good name, and we'll go from there. Either way, who dat? Go Saints. Thanks everyone for listening. We will be right back. And we are back on Inside Black and Gold, getting you ready for the grudge match. I say that every week just because it's ironic. It's Saints 2-9 facing the Dolphins, heading out to Miami for the first time in quite a while to face the Dolphins 4-7. I'm Jeff Nowak alongside Steve Geller as always. And to break it all down, we're bringing in Alain Poupart, publisher of Miami Dolphins on SI, also host of the All Dolphins podcast. And, I debated not doing a preview episode this week because it's Thanksgiving and whatever. But then I looked at this matchup and I was like, the Dolphins might be the most confusing team in the NFL. And I need someone to explain to me exactly how their season has gone the way it has. And I feel like every time I look up, I expect to see a score on a Dolphins game, and it's the opposite of what I expected to see. So, Alan, why don't you just kind of give us the rundown of like what has gone on this season down in Miami?
What has gone down, it was a combination of an inability to close out games early in the season, making the plays when you need to. This was after it started with the opener against the Indianapolis Colts, who I think some folks thought maybe would be decent, not as good as they turned out to be, especially the performance of Daniel Jones. And then they got completely waxed by 25 points. And then it was, again, losing games at the end when they just could not make the plays when they needed, and including week 3 at Buffalo, a place where they haven't won since 2016, where they're down 28-21. They have the ball at the Buffalo 21-yard line, I think it was. 3 minutes left. They have a chance they're going for a game-tying touchdown or possibly game-winning if they go for a 2-point conversion. Boom, there's a pick. And that began a pattern of losing those types of games. They wound up 1-6. And as they did last year when they were 2-6, all of a sudden they started playing better, took advantage of a softer schedule at times. And then they've gotten themselves back to 4-7, heading into their bye. Now they're out of their bye. And their next 2 games are against the Saints and against the New York Jets. logically there are 2 games they should win. They get them back, gets them back at 6-7, and all of a sudden you'll see their name popping up under the teams in the hunt or lurking or others to consider, whatever the tag is going to be.
Jeff mentioned like he looked up and, not expecting to see the score. It's never what he expects when he looks at the Dolphins. For me, every time I look up and see a Dolphins highlight, it's definitely Devon Achane seems to be ripping off massive chunks of yardage for a score. Just break down this running back season he's been having, not just even the rushing yards in the receiving game as well. He really is this Dolphins offense, the heartbeat of it, I think, at least.
Oh, without question. And it's not just this year. Actually, it started last year because the Dolphins acquired Tyreek Hill from the Chiefs in 2022, and for 2 years, as one of my colleagues on here, one of my regular co-hosts on the podcast always says, the Dolphin offense used to be about 2 things: Tyreek and the threat of Tyreek. Well, last year, the ability to hit Tyreek down the field completely disappeared or greatly diminished, and it became a whole bunch of checkdowns and shorter throws, and it was Devon Achane who became the focal point of the offense. And it carried on even more this year, and he's on the verge of reaching 1,000 yards rushing to go along with what he's doing receiving, and you see the big plays occasionally here and there. And he's basically evolved into the kind of running back like Alvin Kamara in his good days. Whole lot of why am I not thinking about those dual threat backs? Jonathan Taylor's probably not quite a good comparison, but he's that type of dual threat. Easily the team MVP.
Yeah, the stats are kind of fascinating to watch for the run game. And you look at, so the team that has 36 rushes at 10-plus yards, which is the 7th most in the NFL, but then their runs are stuffed at 22% of the time, which is the 2nd highest in the NFL. So it's like, I think that's the definition of boom or bust, right? Like,
yeah, but they used to be like, you think they're bad in getting stuffed or in short yardage. This year, they were horrible the past 2 or 3 years. This year, they've actually been really good, except for the last game against Washington and Spain.
Yeah, and I have another one. 0.87 yards before contact, which is 26th in the NFL, and 3.9 yards after contact, which is first in the NFL. So I think that's really kind of the story. It's like for this run game, it's like if you can bottle it up, it can be bottled up. But if you let it get it's a lot of wide zone as far as I understand it. Like a lot of the runs are outside the tackles, and it's like if you play it well, you can stuff it. But if you kind of lose containment or you lose your composure and you don't fill a gap, he can be gone like that. Like that's kind of how I expect to see this offense.
Yeah, they also throw a lot of backward passes, which go in the books as runs. And sometimes those work, and sometimes get thrown for a 4-yard loss, and that affects the yards before contact average. So I would say for the most part, the running game has been pretty solid, even more so lately. Sometimes there has been a tendency to get away from it too quickly. It starting with Atlanta. Big change that happened is starting with Atlanta in week 7. The Dolphins didn't have their blocking tight end, Julian Hill. So what they did is they inserted Daniel Brunskill, who's an interior offensive lineman, as a tight end, and they have kept that jumbo package or heavy formation, however you want to call it, even for the past 3 games, even after Hill came back from his injury. And my guess is they're going to continue using that because they've had some success with it.
Yeah, and so I guess let's just talk about Tua for a minute. I feel like every time I look, like he feels like one of the more polarizing quarterbacks.
One of the more? How about the most?
Yeah, sure. I'm trying to be kind. Okay. But yeah, and Mike McDaniel the same way. Like I feel like he's one of those guys that it's like when it's going well, the goofiness is endearing, and when it's going poorly, it's like, get this guy away from me. I can't deal with it. And so where do you land on Tua? The stat that stands out to me is, 2.56, the fastest time to throw in the NFL. So a lot of quick passing game, like you mentioned, a lot of throws behind or at the line of scrimmage. So I think that's probably got a lot to do with that. But, and that kind of manifests in, you're not getting blitzed a ton. The third fewest pressures allowed because you're not allowing pressure to get there if you're throwing the ball that quickly. But what have you kind of seen? He's a guy who's gotten paid. So it's not like you have to worry. You're asking like, oh, should they give him a big contract? They already got the big contract. So how have you how is everyone kind of landing on Tua as we speak today?
You certainly can ask, should they have given him the big contract? Because that's a big question around here. And it hasn't changed ever since he got here, ever since Mike McDaniel got here in 2022. Tua has been extraordinarily polarizing. It's the same this year. He hasn't been as efficient. The thing with Tua, even when his numbers were really, really good, more than anything else, he was efficient. Even Mike McDaniel called him this year a point guard. That's what he is. If Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle are getting wide open 15 to 20 yards on the field, you don't have to worry about it. Tua's going to get him the ball. Well, that stopped happening last year and this year. So the long completions are few and far between. There have been a few sprinkled here and there with Waddles ever since Tyreek Hill went out with that pretty brutal looking knee injury in week 4, but he's also thrown a lot more picks, some of which Dolphin coaches are very quick to defend because they told him to check it down the field really, deep, even though it's into double coverage. He's just not been as efficient in 2025. And the problem is, even at his best, having an efficient quarterback when you use the salary cap number, for example, next year is $56 million. Is that really a good use of salary cap space? Me, I say no. Not my decision to make. They kind of stuck with him in 2026, one way or another, because nobody's trading for him. I know the Saints have been. Some of my colleagues are suggesting, hey, the Saints could use him. Like the Saints really want that contract on their hand when they're kind of in the rebuilding mode. Personally, I don't think so, but you guys would know more than I would. So he's always had his group of supporters where he can do no wrong. And if things go poorly, it's the offensive line, the wide receivers aren't getting open, everybody else. And then there are some detractors where he can't do anything right, when the reality obviously is somewhere in the middle. He's had some very good stretches, played some highly efficient games, but he's never going to wow you like a Josh Allen or those guys who can do things more, single-handedly or plays off structure.
Jeff mentioned with McDaniel, the head coach, things looked very shaky for him early on in the season, but 3 wins in the last 4 games, pretty impressive what they've done. And then the 2 straight going into the bye week. Just overall, how's he been able to keep, I guess, everything together right now?
Yeah, I would say it looked probably more shaky from the outside than I think from within the Dolphin organization, because Stephen Ross really, really likes Mike McDaniel. And the ability not to lose the team after a bad start, that was shown last year. They were 2-6, if you recall, last year. Trade deadline came. They were going to do Calais Campbell a solid and send him to a contender because maybe it was going to be his last year. But now who knows? Maybe he'll play another 10 years the way he keeps playing. But they hung on to him because they had this belief that they could make a run, and they went from 2-6 to finishing 8-9, which still a good comeback, shows you some resilience. And this year it's the same deal. He's very quirky. He's very, very smart. I don't know if you guys have heard, but he went to an Ivy League school. Little joke. And he's very innovative on offense with the X's. I knows what he does in the running game. How he maximize. He got the best out of Tua, because Tua's first 2 years under Brian Flores were extraordinarily meh. And then his game took off. But if we're going to talk about how good it is that he's gotten the team to stay together and bounce back after a 2-6 start, then we also have to look, well, that's the 2 years in a row now they're starting like off poorly like that. And they're almost basically out of contention at the halfway mark. Having said all that, I am of the opinion that unless the Dolphins really look really poor in the final 6 games of the regular season, Dolphins very, very well might run it back in 2026 with not only Tua, but with head coach Mike McDaniel. They did make the switch at GM, removing Chris Greer, who had been there since 2016. They have Champ Kelly as interim GM. He was hired in March from the Raiders. Wouldn't surprise me if the Dolphins gave a 1-year tryout or extended tryout to McDaniel, Tua, and Champ Kelly in 2026 to see what they can do.
Yeah, just switching gears to the defense for a bit. And, Anthony Weaver's a guy whose name always pops up in head coach conversations. I have to imagine it's going to happen for him eventually. He interviewed for the Saints head coaching opening. They obviously went with Kellen Moore. I think they wanted to, defensive head coaches are always tough because I think a lot of teams would prefer to go the offensive route because you probably have an easier time replacing your defensive coordinator than your offensive coordinator when you inevitably get switched, but it is what it is. It's not a defense that's loaded with household names. You obviously have Minkah Fitzpatrick, Matthew Judon, who's a little on the back end of his career, probably. Benito Jones, Bradley Chubb. Jordan Brooks is leading the NFL in tackles. He's got 125, which is a crazy number at this. This is another high blitz rate team. The Saints just struggled mightily against one last week, so it gives me some concern that that's going to happen again. But I wouldn't say it's a top tier pressure team. So it's there is a lot of blitzes being sent I think they're third in the NFL in blitz rate, but they're middle of the pack in terms of sacks and pressures. So what has this defense done well when it's played well? And obviously a lot of the run game feels like it's a susceptible area for this defense. But where have you kind of seen them excel, and where have you seen them struggle?
Oh, excel is a strong word. I don't know if they've excelled anywhere. In fact, the defense or the performance of the defense was a hot topic here for the past. I mean, the first 6 month and a half, 6 weeks of the regular season, in how poorly it played. The opponent passer rating was through the roof. The run defense was a major problem. Things started getting a lot better. The Atlanta game in week 7, they completely stuffed Bijan Robinson. Kind of did the same. I'm trying to think, would they play Derrick Henry? Derrick Henry had some yards, but they were all in the second half once the game got out of hand. So the run defense has shored up a little bit. It was really poor early on. What they did very well the last 2 games. Buffalo, I mentioned, they also completely smothered James Cook when they played the rematch at Hard Rock Stadium. What they've done the past couple of weeks, and what really helped in those wins against Buffalo and Washington, when they held those teams to 13 points, despite giving 375 yards, as they came up with takeaways, which they weren't doing early in the season. That's been an area of improvement. They also have 3 rookie defensive tackles in the rotation, with first-round pick Kenneth Grant, Jordan Phillips in the 5th round, Zeke Biggers in the 7th round. Those guys are coming along, playing better than they did early in the season, so that's an area of improvement. The secondary, they patched it up. They had cornerback injury after cornerback injury. After losing Kendall Fuller to free agency, they released him, and then they traded Jalen Ramsey. Now they're making do with Jack Jones and Rasul Douglas, who have been fairly solid. The pass rush is okay, not great. They traded Jalen Phillips to the Eagles because they weren't going to re-sign him as an unrestricted free agent for sure. So they decided, let's get the 3rd round pick, which was the best we could do as a compensatory pick, even if he leaves as a free agent. So long story short, I know it's a little too late for that, but long story shorter, it's an okay defense, has been playing a little bit better, but it's not yet to be confused with one of the great units around the NFL. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I think that's what gives me concern about this matchup for the Saints is that the Dolphins seem like a team that you need to be able to run against to have a ton of success against, right? Like, it's not a great defense, but if you can't run the ball against them, they can do what they want to do. They can set up the blitz, they can pressure, even though they only have 21 sacks in the season. And the Saints just haven't been able to do that, right? Like, this is a Dolphins team that's allowed the 8th most yards per game, but it's primarily on the ground. 142.6 rush yards per game, 47 rushes of 10-plus yards allowed, the 3rd most in the NFL, 1.67 yards before contact allowed, the 5th most in the NFL, and 3.6 yards after contact allowed, which is the 5th most in the NFL. It's not good when you rank in the top 10 of yards before contact and after contact. And so I guess, is that accurate? Would you say that's true? In the games the Dolphins defense has played well, have they really kind of struggled against the run?
Yeah, and you mentioned the yards after contact is they were tackling was a major problem early in the season. Yeah. I mean, they were bad. They have tightened that up big time the last few weeks, where you don't see a lot of missed tackles. Against Washington, the final numbers weren't good, but that includes a 44-yard run by Marcus Mariota after he was flushed out. So I don't want to be that guy, because I know defensive coordinator Anthony Weaver took some flack at one point for saying our run defense is good if you take away that 50-yard run. Well, it's kind of there also. And that, for example, they played Cleveland and they kind of shut down Judkins, the really good-looking rookie from Ohio State, except he had like a 44-yard touchdown run. Well, okay. Those have been, for the most part, eliminated in recent weeks, which is where they've played better. The pass rush is spotty. It's not great. They're still looking for Chop Robinson, their 1st-round pick from 2024, to really bust out. He was really good in the second half last year, came in this year. The issue with him is the run defense is still a problem, so he generally will line up mostly in obvious pass rushing situations, which limits his playing time a little bit. Weaver said they are going to get more playing time now that Phillips is in Philadelphia, but they played against Washington and Robinson didn't start. It was Bradley Chubb on one side and it was Matthew Judon on the other side. And Matthew Judon, I know you were very, very polite earlier on is not remotely the same player he was in his best days with the Patriots.
Does he still wear the red sleeves?
He does. Oh, they're orange now, though. Although I'm colorblind, I think they're orange.
You look at this, the home crowd at Hard Rock Stadium. What should we expect from the Miami fan base? No, you're shaking your head. Not there, huh?
Especially with all the respect I can muster to the Saints.
I hear you.
The atmosphere has been an issue after the rough start. The Saints is not a team that's going to bring in a whole lot of outside folks. I would expect, I can't believe I'm going to say this, I would expect it would probably lean closer to what a preseason game looks like than what a Super Bowl would look like.
Yeah, that hurts.
Playoff game, though, because Super Bowl is more like corporate.
So people will be outside enjoying the weather somewhere else.
Very possibly. Yeah, I can't imagine it's going to be a great crowd. And that's even with the Dolphins having won 2 games, because I put up stories on the website, like throwing out the idea of like, here's what the other teams we're looking at, who we need to win, who we need to lose for the Dolphins to inject themselves into the playoff picture. And it's like, how can you be talking playoff picture? They're going to lose to the Saints. That's kind of where a lot of the fan mindset is these days.
Yeah. Well, trust me, I get it. We've every time, like the Saints finally had like an ounce of optimism after going up to Carolina and beating the Panthers, and they came back home and had the worst game of the season on offense. So hey, it's tough to get people excited about teams that are just objectively terrible. You got to try.
New slogan in New Orleans has to be "Let the good times wait," right?
Yeah, I think it's more so. There's a lot of things to do with New Orleans, and going to watch the Saints is like not at the top of the list right now.
Yeah, no, it's one of those matchups. It's a weird matchup for the Dolphins here because it might not even be enough to please the fan base. It might not even be enough to win. They have to like spank them,
dominate, right?
Yeah, it's weird because I could see the Saints going in there and winning just if they get their shit together, right? Like if they do the things that have worked. If they can run the ball, they won't have Alvin Kamara. At least we don't have the injury report. We're recording this before the injury reports, but they're not going to have Alvin Kamara. He sprained his knee. He's not going to play. So it's like, okay, if Devin Neal has the game of his life, if, Chris Olave comes alive, if Tyler Shuck handles the pocket well, handles the blitz well. But I could also see them going out there and losing by 30. So
I was going to say, Jeff, that's a lot of ifs you're saying.
Yeah.
Well, right. But it's just such a weird matchup. And the Dolphins, it's like you never know. Like, again, it's like lost 31-6 to the Browns. How the hell did that happen? It's like it's
bad weather conditions was a big problem. And they were completely dysfunctional that day. It's like, let's see how we can mess this up. Okay, yeah, we'll do that. Okay, yeah, we'll do that. I mean, it was bad.
Yeah. I feel like it's a matchup of teams that are really good at finding ways to lose games, right?
Yeah. And the Dolphins were that. If the Saints, the only way the Saints have a fighting chance is if they can contain Achane, because the Dolphins are going to look. Ideally, I think Mike McDaniel probably has circled at least 35 rushing attempts.
Go ahead. So my one last question, okay, and I'll let you go. Is it Malik Washington? Like, who is the guy behind Jalen Waddle at wide receiver that you should be worried about?
Hold on. Could take a while. Hold on. Here's the thing. It's Malik Washington with the caveat that Malik Washington is kind of used like Deebo Samuel, where he's going to line up in the backfield. They're going to give him the ball either on an inside handoff or an end around. They're going to throw. Remember, I told you a lot of those passes at the line of scrimmage, either lateral or even backwards. They're going to do that a lot with Malik Washington. He had a catch down the field. Who was it against? A couple of weeks ago. Might have been the first time. I think he caught a pass more than 10 yards downfield. But outside of that, the wide receivers are D. Eskridge, who's been more of a kick returner. It's Taj Washington, who's a rookie whose first touch ended with a fumble against Baltimore inside the 20-yard line. Nick Westbrook-Akine was a free agent pickup from the Tennessee Titans, whose biggest contribution has been blocking. And then a guy the Dolphins got from the Saints practice squad, who they brought back, Cedric Wilson Jr., affectionately known from Tyreek Hill. He nicknamed him Onion Head Said. Which one of the greatest nicknames of all time. We've basically done it all. So no, they have
not much. Is
in terms of receiving threats downfield? Nobody. Darren Waller would be that guy,
right?
But he
on injured reserve. Yeah.
Mike McDaniel told us Monday he was going to be designated to return, so return to practice on Wednesday. I still think he's not likely to play against the Saints. The pattern's been, 2 weeks of practice before they play.
Yeah.
If he gets into the lineup, he's a factor. And even without him, it just might be that the biggest threat beyond the line of scrimmage outside of Jalen Waddle might be another tight end who the Dolphins got from the New York Giants after they waived him. That's Greg Dulcich, who's a former third-round pick out of UCLA.
All right. Well, now I know to call this the Onion Head Said revenge game.
See, there you go.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Alain Poupart, publisher of the Miami Dolphins on SI, also hosts the All Dolphins podcast. Make sure to check it out. Appreciate the insight. I won't tell you Happy Thanksgiving because we're going to be posting this after Thanksgiving, but I hope you had a good Thanksgiving in the future as we time travel for this episode.
We're thankful for him.
Yes.
You're very nice. And I'm pretty sure I will have had a good Thanksgiving.
It's good to know. Appreciate the time, I really do.
You got it.
Cheers.
Go Expos.
Very nice.
And we're back on Inside Black and Gold to close out this abbreviated Thanksgiving week episode. Jeff Nowak alongside Steve Geller. I want to thank Alain Poupart for coming on again. Like a good insight there, and yeah, I think you kind of heard it there. Like if the Saints can run the ball, I think they have a chance in this game. I really do think that is the biggest key, and it's the biggest question mark because they have Devin Neal. They have Audric Estime. They have Evan Hull. Can you run the ball with that group? And if you can, I think that's a really good sign that you have a young running back that you can maybe build with. If you can't, then I think you lose this game.
I'm curious to see just overall too how this run game responds with likely no Alvin Kamara in it. And we know AK's been kind of battling that ankle issue all year and just hasn't looked like himself. So will his absence be even more of a detriment, or maybe can Neal give that boost we've been waiting for from the run game?
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, that's why it's kind of a mystery to me because I hate to say it, but I don't think Alvin was providing that much in the run game. And I don't know if maybe he's limited by the ankle injury. Maybe he's finally to that point where he just lost enough juice that he's like, what have you seen from him in the run game that felt like, oh, this is the guy that's providing it?
Yeah.
And yeah, the offensive line hasn't been good, but I have seen Devin Neal get in there and create some, create. Like, we saw the same thing with Kendre Miller. It wasn't like everything was blocked up perfectly for those guys, but they did seem to be able to generate 4, 5, 6 yard runs in situations that it felt like Alvin was getting tackled for 1 or 2 yards. And maybe that's a mirage. Maybe I'm seeing that and it's not actually there. But if you can get 4 or 5 yards on first down more often, I think that makes your offense work a lot better. So we'll see. And it's going to be Devin Neal's week. And the good news is it's not a question to me. I think Alvin's going to be out. Like, I don't think a 30-year-old running back coming off a sprained knee is back a week after that injury. And so he's going to get all the week of reps. This is going to be Devin Neal's week, even though it's a Thanksgiving week. But I think that's helpful because he's going to go into the matchup. There's going to be no question what his role is going to be. He's going to be the lead back. And so that's what I'm excited about. I don't know if the Saints are going to win this game, but this is the point of the season where any opportunity you have to evaluate a young player in a featured role that he wouldn't typically get, that's a win. And I don't mean to make light of Alvin's injury. It's a bummer that he's dealing with an injury, but these are the type of things in the second half of a lost season that, okay, Tyler Shuck, Devin Neal, is this kind of your battery next year? Or do you have to really invest in a young elite running back and along with the offensive line and whatever else?
Yeah, and along with that run game, just the offensive line wanted to see a bounce back performance because it was not pretty last outing against the Falcons. And we mentioned that, the Dolphins pass rush really isn't that scary. So hopefully Shuck has a little more time to do what he wants.
Yeah, and I think it's funny because the blitz rate is interesting because last week we had the Falcons, who were the second highest blitz rate team in the NFL, 44%. This week we have the Dolphins, who are the third highest blitz rate team in the NFL at 35.3%. And the difference is the Falcons blitz because they want to. And we kind of saw that. Like, they were generating pressure without the blitz. They were sending that extra rusher because they knew it would put stress on the protection plan in ways that the Saints were going to really struggle to deal with, and they did. The Dolphins blitz because they have to. Like, that's the difference. And you can see that in the sack totals. Like, the Falcons blitz at the second highest rate in the NFL, but they also have the second most sacks in the NFL. They got to Tyler Shuck 5 times and they pressured him 20 times. Like, they're generating pressure with the defensive line and then adding that extra rusher that makes it so, okay, shit. Like, we're in trouble now because we couldn't pick up the 4-man front. The Dolphins have 21 sacks despite all of these blitzes. That's 26th in the NFL. Their pressure totals are right in the middle.
I was surprised how low.
So this shouldn't be a game that Tyler can't operate because of the pressure. But it's going to be a game that the protection plan has to get right because there will be a 5th or a 6th rusher coming regularly, right? So I'm okay. I think you can handle Matt Judon. You can handle these guys up front. It's wherever that pressure is coming from. It's going to be on Devin Neal, right? Like, he's going to have to pick up pressure a lot of the time. Whoever's into the tight end, Taysom Hill, who I expect to, like, I would be surprised if he's not kind of the secondary running back, even if Evan Hull or Audric Estime is active. I would still expect Taysom Hill to have that running back role. So he's going to be important in pass protection. And if you can run the ball and slow down that blitz, even better. But, like, to me, that's the story. And, like, on defense, it's going to be what it's going to be. They're going to get the ball out quick. They're going to do this wide zone. You're going to have to string it out. You're going to have to tackle. But it's a pretty simple game, all things considered. It's like, can you run the ball? Can you pick up the blitz? Can you tackle in the run game?
Yeah, I thought last week, we were going to have one of the scariest back that the Saints would face in Bijan, but Achan's up there as well, man.
The difference is Bijan Robinson, and you may have seen this. I noticed this several times. Like, he's one of these, like, super fast, scary backs who can break it like that and be a home run hitter, but he's also got the power. Like, there were times that the Saints got him in the backfield and you could just see his legs just kept going. And it was like he was moving a blocking sled. Like, you see them do those drills where they push the blocking sleds and you just kind of, like, they're climbing. He did that. Like, there were times where he should have been stopped for a 1 or 2 yard loss and it was a 2-yard gain simply because he just kept pushing. Like, he's got that power. And that's the difference. Like, Achan is a good back. He's fast. He's elusive. He's not a power back. He's not pushing the pile the way Bijan did, and that's why you see the stuff rate so high. So if they can continue to do that, and Demario Davis has 15 tackles this year for no gain or loss. It's most among linebackers in the NFL. So the Saints have been doing that pretty well. And so I think with Bijan, you had to worry about both things. You had to worry about, okay, if we can get to him and prevent that kind of home run threat, we're in good shape. But if we can also, but then he can also just create 2-3 yards when it's not there. With Achan, it's really only that first thing. So I think that's the story. It's like, you need to be composed. You need to be fundamentally sound and get to him. And when you tackle, you just got to do it right. Like, it's more of a fundamentals game than okay, buck up, because this is going to be like, who knows what's going to happen either way kind of game, if that makes sense.
I'm definitely glad a guy like Darren Waller is not going to be around for this game. We've seen him in the past for sure, from the Saints' perspective, and just it's really unfortunate for him. You know him well as well, but he started this year doing great, and then the injury bug once again hits that dude.
Yeah, I mean, I remember being excited when the Giants signed him.
Right.
It's like him and Kenny Golladay. Like, it was like every time the Giants sign a player that's like excited, wow, can't wait to see this, and then they just fall off the planet. It's bizarre. To the point that it's like, yeah, I mean, Darren Waller retired and then came back and he's still playing well. Like, he's still got it. It's not like he's dead. It's like the Giants sap your will to play football.
What was he going to pursue, a music career? Was it?
I don't know. He was married to Kelsey Plum for a while and then they got divorced and they started rapping. But all right, that's going to be the episode. We're going to wrap it up. Again, my name is Jeff Nowak. He is Steve Geller. We're getting ready for Saints Dolphins. It is Thanksgiving week. It is a quick episode. So we're going to be getting after it. Hopefully the Saints stuff their face on Thursday and then play good football on Sunday. Can we hope for that? Right?
Stuff a W.
Stuff a dub. All right. Who dat? Go Saints. Thanks everyone for listening. Hope you had a good Thanksgiving. And let's
Shuck it.
We tried shucking it last week. It didn't work. We'll try it again this week. Who dat? Thanks, y'all. Peace.
Later, folks.